listen, it doesn't stop. It's in here, right here, like a buzzing, like a little radio. You hear it?
Okay. Just breathe for me.
No, you don't get it. It's in my head. Look, right here. You see it?
I hear you. We're going to get you checked out. Keep your hands where I can see them and just breathe.
You can't arrest me for that, can you? I didn't do anything. I just
nobody's
needed
arresting
out.
you right now. You're safe.
The night air was thick with tension as the police bodycam lens stayed fixed on the woman in the blue tank top. Deputy Hammock held her arm firmly, trying to keep her steady while the arrest process began. "Well, the quicker we get this process started, the better," he said, his voice calm but serious. Sasha looked up at him, her eyes glassy and her movement slow. She didn't seem to understand the trouble she was in. Instead of answering his questions, she leaned in with a strange look on her face. "I just want to talk to him and be able to, wait," she trailed off, her mind clearly foggy from the alcohol. Then, she asked something that caught everyone off guard. "Are you sure you don't got anything on your ear?" she whispered, looking at the deputy's face. Before he could even process the question, she continued, "My ear. It really itches." The deputy didn't move. He wasn't there to provide comfort, he was there to do a job. "I ain't scratching your ear," he replied flatly. But Sasha wouldn't let it go. She squirmed against his grip, her voice becoming more insistent. "It really itches." "Yeah, sure, go ahead. I don't want to seem weird." The deputy sighed and looked away for a second, trying to stay professional in a situation that was turning into a joke. "That's, you know what. I ain't looking," he said. He knew this was going to be a long night. "If that's the weirdest thing that happened to us tonight, we're doing okay," he muttered under his breath. Sasha just stood there, still worried about her itchy ear while the reality of the situation stayed hidden behind her drunken haze. This bizarre moment was only the beginning of a story that involved a violent fight, a bleeding husband, and a woman who was about to find herself completely alone on the side of a highway. The bright Ohio sun beat down on the pavement as the police car pulled into the gas station parking lot. Sasha stood near the edge of the road, looking lost and confused in a place she didn't know. She was far from her home in Nebraska, left behind with nothing but her thoughts and a heavy feeling of intoxication. When the officers walked up to her, she didn't seem happy to see them. Instead of asking for help, she immediately went on the attack, asking them why they weren't helping her and accusing them of being racist. The deputies tried to calm her down, but Sasha was too upset to listen. She explained that she was an over-the-road trucker and that her husband, Dante, was also a CDL driver. She told a messy story about how they had been traveling together until he started mistreating her and making her feel small. According to Sasha, she had hopped out of the truck at a different gas station earlier that day, and another officer had actually brought her to this spot. She felt like everyone was against her, from the store clerks who wanted her to leave to the husband who had vanished with her cell phone. As she stood there in the grass, Sasha kept talking in circles. She told the officers she just wanted to go home to Omaha, but she didn't know where she was or how to get there. She felt like she was being treated like a criminal just for being sad and drunk. She kept insisting that she hadn't done anything wrong, even though the police were there because of a report of a physical fight. To Sasha, she was just a wife whose feelings were hurt, stranded in Fayette County by a man who was supposed to protect her. She didn't realize yet that the police had already found Dante, and his version of the story was much different than hers. As the deputies tried to gather facts, Sasha's frustration boiled over into accusations. Every time an officer asked a difficult question about why she was left behind, she fired back with claims of bias. "Why aren't you helping me?" "To be that racist," she shouted, her voice echoing across the gas station lot. She felt that the police were only taking the side of the store clerks and her husband because of her race, rather than looking at her hurt feelings. The deputies remained calm, but they were clearly tired of this tactic. One officer noted that people often throw around the racist thing just because they are being held accountable for their own actions. Sasha, however, wouldn't back down. She argued that the store clerks were only trying to escalate her out of the building and that the police were participating in it. In her mind, she was a victim being treated unfairly in a town where she was a total stranger. Even when the officers tried to explain that they were simply investigating a physical altercation, Sasha stayed on the defense. She claimed she was only being escorted out because she was acting a fool, but argued it was only because she didn't know where she was. This racist defense became her main shield, a way to deflect from the fact that her husband was sitting nearby with a bloody head injury caused by her own hands. She continued to paint herself as the target of a systemic attack, while the bodycam footage captured a much simpler reality, a woman whose intoxication was causing an alarm and annoyance to everyone around her. To understand why Sasha was so upset, you have to look at her life on the road. Sasha and Dante were both over the road, OTR, truckers, which means they spent weeks at a time living inside a small truck cabin. It is a hard job where you are always moving, sleeping in different states, and dealing with the stress of long hours on the highway. For Sasha and Dante, the truck wasn't just a job, it was their home. Sasha explained that she took great pride in being part of a team with her husband. As a professional driver, she held a CDL license, which is very hard to get and easy to lose if you get into legal trouble. She talked about how they traveled from their home in Omaha, Nebraska, across the country to places like Ohio. But being stuck in a small space with another person for days can lead to big arguments, especially when alcohol is involved. Sasha felt that because she was a hard-working trucker, she deserved more respect than she was getting that night. She complained that Dante had started mistreating her and making her feel less than, which hurt her feelings deeply. On the road, your partner is often the only person you have, and when that relationship breaks down in a strange town, everything falls apart. Sasha was a long way from Nebraska, and without her truck or her teammate, she felt like she had lost her whole identity. Standing in the grass, Sasha tried to explain why she was so angry. To her, the physical fight wasn't just a random outburst, it was the result of a long day of hurt feelings. She told the deputies that she deeply wanted to respect her husband, but when her feelings were hurt, she couldn't oblige by that. She admitted that she often walks off emotion, which she realized was a dangerous place to be, but in that moment, her emotions were in control. Sasha felt that as her man, Dante was supposed to protect her no matter what. She never expected him to actually drive off and leave her in a place she didn't know. She argued that he had started mistreating her and making her feel less than, which is what caused her to hop out of the truck in the first place. Because she was intoxicated, her logic was blurry. She felt that since he hurt her heart, any reaction she had was justified. She kept insisting that she didn't do anything wrong, even though the police were asking about a violent headbutt. In Sasha's mind, she was just defending her case and her dignity. She believed that being drunk was just an excuse people were using to blame her, rather than looking at the emotional pain she was in. She just wanted the officers to understand that she was a wife who had been let down by the person she trusted most. As the sun began to set, the shadows in the bushes grew longer, and Sasha's fear began to spiral out of control. She looked at the deputy standing near her and suddenly felt a wave of terror. "So, you scaring me with your arm right there? Are you going to shoot me?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of intoxication and genuine fright. Even though the deputy was just standing there, Sasha's mind was racing with stories she had heard about society and the police. The officer tried to reassure her, calmly explaining that his gun was tucked away in its holster and not in his hand. "Is my gun right here?" "I don't know." "That's why I was asking," Sasha replied, peering through the darkness toward his belt. She kept repeating that she was scared because she was stuck in the bushes and didn't know what was happening around her. To her, the uniform and the gear the officers wore were no longer signs of safety, they were signs of danger. The deputies told her there was nothing to be scared about and that she couldn't believe everything she heard, but Sasha was too far gone to listen. Her paranoia was a wall that blocked out their words of comfort. She felt like a target in a place where she didn't belong, and every movement the officers made felt like a threat to her life. In her drunken state, the simple act of a deputy moving his arm felt like the beginning of a life-or-death situation. While Sasha was busy arguing with the officers, another deputy was already over at the gas station speaking with her husband, Dante. The scene there was much more serious. Dante was not just upset, he was profusely bleeding from a wound on his head. The red blood was a sharp contrast to the bright lights of the station, proving that the fight in the middle of the road had been much more than just a simple disagreement. When the deputy asked Sasha about what happened to his head, she suddenly went quiet. For a woman who hadn't stopped talking since the police arrived, this was the first time she took a long pause to think. She claimed she didn't know what happened and tried to act like she had just arrived at the scene, but the officers knew better. They told her straight out that Dante said she was the one who headbutted him during their fight on the highway. Sasha tried to deny it at first, asking, "How did I headbutt him?" She claimed they weren't fighting and that they were just talking, but the injury on Dante's face told a different story. The deputies explained that people don't usually call the police just for chatting, they call when someone is being assaulted. Seeing her husband in that state should have been a wake-up call, but Sasha was more focused on defending herself than worrying about the man she had just injured. As the pressure from the deputies increased, Sasha's story began to crack. She had spent a long time denying that anything physical had happened, but eventually, the truth slipped out. In a moment of frustration, she admitted the unthinkable. "I willingly attacked him and headbutted him," she said, her own words hanging in the air like a heavy cloud. It was a shocking confession for a woman who had just claimed she was the victim. The deputy immediately caught the slip. He repeated her words back to her to make sure he heard correctly, so willingly attacked him and headbutted him with intentions to hurt him. Sasha tried to pull back right away, realizing she had said too much. "No," she quickly added, trying to change her story again, but the damage was already done. She had admitted to a violent act that explained exactly why her husband was bleeding and why he had left her behind. Even as she tried to argue that her intentions weren't to hurt him, she couldn't take back the fact that she had used her head as a weapon. She tried to make it sound like it was just a part of their disagreement, but the law saw it differently. By admitting she headbutted him, Sasha turned a simple domestic argument into a criminal battery case. She was no longer just a stranded traveler, she was a suspect who had just confessed to a crime on a police bodycam. Even after admitting to a physical fight, Sasha's mind was stuck on one thing, her expensive cell phone. As the police explained that she was being detained, she didn't seem to care about the legal charges as much as she cared about her technology. "Wait, because I'm looking for my phone," she told the officers, ignoring their orders to stand up. She explained that she had paid a lot of money for her iPhone 15 and was terrified of leaving it behind at the gas station. To Sasha, the phone was more than just a tool, it was her connection to the world and her life in Nebraska. She felt that losing the phone would be a disaster, even as she was facing a much bigger disaster with the law. "I would like to get my cell phone before I just banish the scene," she pleaded, acting as if the police could just wait for her to find it. She even argued with Dante about it, claiming that he didn't care about her property. The deputies tried to stay focused on the arrest, but Sasha kept bringing the conversation back to the iPhone. She used the phone as a reason to delay the process, hoping that if she found it, she could somehow fix the situation. Her obsession with the device showed how disoriented she really was. She was worried about a piece of glass and metal while her freedom was slipping away. In her drunken haze, the iPhone 15 was the most important thing in the world, more important than the husband she had hurt or the trouble she was in. The deputy had heard enough and decided it was time to take action. He looked at Sasha and told her clearly that she was being arrested. Sasha seemed shocked, as if she didn't expect her actions to have real consequences. "For what?" she asked over and over. The officer explained that she was being charged with public intoxication and disorderly conduct. He told her that she was heavily drunk in a public place and was causing an alarm or annoyance to the people around her. Sasha tried to argue that she wasn't heavily drunk, even though she had just spent the last few minutes admitting she was intoxicated. She felt that simply being drunk shouldn't be a reason to go to jail, especially since she was just walking off emotion. The deputy explained that her behavior at the gas station, begging the store clerks and causing a scene, was exactly what disorderly conduct meant. Even as the handcuffs were being prepared, Sasha kept trying to negotiate. She didn't understand that once a police officer decides to make an arrest for being drunk in public, the conversation is usually over. She felt that her hurt feelings should give her a pass, but the law in Ohio was very clear. By being intoxicated and making a scene at the Pilot gas station, she had broken the rules, and now she had to answer for it. As the reality of the arrest set in, Sasha tried one last way to get out of trouble. She turned to the deputies and tried to show them that she was on their side. "I'm on his team. I am a conservative," she said, hoping that by sharing her political views, the officers might see her as a friend rather than a criminal. She believed that if they knew she supported them, they might let her go with just a warning instead of taking her to jail. Sasha felt that her identity as a hard-working, conservative woman from Nebraska made her different from other people the police might arrest. She kept insisting that she was a good person who had just had a very bad day. "I would like to consume it," she muttered, still sounding very confused as she looked at the officers. She wanted them to see her as a teammate, just like she saw herself as part of a team with Dante. However, the deputies didn't let her words change their minds. To them, the law was the same for everyone, regardless of what they believed or who they supported. They kept telling her to stand up and turn around so they could finish the arrest. Sasha's final plea for a special connection didn't work. The handcuffs were still coming, and her attempt to use her personal beliefs to escape the situation only showed how desperate she had become to avoid the consequences of her actions. The clicking sound of the metal handcuffs was the final proof that Sasha's night had truly changed. Deputy Hammock moved efficiently, bringing her hands behind her back and securing the locks. Sasha winced, feeling the cold metal against her skin. "Cuffs are already on you." Trust me, I will explain it all," the officer said as he finished the job. Sasha didn't understand why this was happening to her. She felt that she was being punished just for having a difficult relationship. She began to panic as the reality of being a prisoner set in. "I don't want to get shot." "Don't be ridiculous," she cried out, her eyes darting around the dark field. The deputies kept their hands on her arms, acting as her handlers as they began to move her away from the gas station area. They tried to keep her moving forward, but Sasha was wobbly and kept trying to turn around to look for Dante. She was no longer a professional driver in charge of a big truck, she was a woman being led away by police. Sasha kept asking if her husband knew she was going to jail. "Can I at least see him? Does he know I'm going to jail?" she begged. The deputies told her they would let him know, but they didn't stop walking. Being handled like this made Sasha feel small and powerless. She had spent the whole night trying to stay in control by talking and making excuses, but now that she was in handcuffs, the police were the ones in charge. She was being moved like a piece of cargo, headed toward a patrol car and a future she didn't want to face. The walk to the patrol car was the most difficult part of the night for Sasha. Because she had hopped out of the truck in a hurry, she didn't have any shoes on her feet. The path to the car wasn't a smooth sidewalk, it was a steep hill covered in sharp, jagged rocks. As the deputies led her forward, Sasha winced with every step, the stones digging into her skin. "I hurt it." "What are you hurting?" "The rock getting," she complained, her voice tight with pain as she tried to find a soft place to step. The deputies knew they had to get her up to the car, but Sasha's intoxication made her balance very poor. She begged the officers to help her or even lift her up because the ground was so rough. "Is it too much to ask you to lift me?" she asked, hoping for a bit of mercy. The officers encouraged her to keep moving, pointing her toward a patch of grass where there were no rocks to hurt her feet. They didn't want her to fall or get hurt, but they also couldn't stop the arrest just because she was uncomfortable. As she struggled up the hill, Sasha kept trying to talk about the fight, but the physical pain of the rocks was starting to take over her focus. This painful walk was a symbol of how her night had gone, a rough and bumpy road that she had chosen when she started drinking and fighting. By the time she reached the top of the hill, she was exhausted and hurting, and the warm lights of the gas station felt like a world away. She was barefoot, in handcuffs, and officially leaving the life of a trucker behind for a jail cell. As Sasha was led toward the police vehicle, the focus shifted back to where the trouble started, the Pilot gas station. While Sasha claimed she was just defending her case and talking in the middle of the street, the store clerks had a very different story. The staff at the station had been the ones to call for help because they saw the situation turning dangerous. They witnessed the acting a fool behavior that Sasha tried to deny later on. One of the deputies explained to Sasha that store employees don't just come out and intervene for no reason. They don't come out if you're just chatting with each other. They come out because you're assaulting each other, he told her firmly. The clerks had watched the couple stopping traffic and fighting in the road, which is what created the alarm and annoyance that led to her disorderly conduct charge. Even though Sasha tried to blame the staff for escalating her out of the store, the truth was that they were worried about the safety of their customers and the bleeding man in the parking lot. Sasha tried to argue that the clerks were wrong and that there was no physical assault, but the evidence was everywhere. There were no cameras in the middle of the road to capture the headbutt, but the people at the pilot station had seen enough to know that Sasha was out of control. Their statements provided the foundation for the deputy's decision to take her into custody. To the witnesses at the gas station, Sasha wasn't a victim, she was a public disturbance who had turned a quiet night into a violent scene. Even as she sat in the back of the police car, Sasha's mind refused to accept what was happening. She kept repeating the same phrase over and over, "I did not assault nobody. I didn't do any of that." In her head, the headbutt she had admitted to earlier wasn't a crime, it was just a part of her defending her case in the middle of the street. She believed that if she just explained her side one more time, the officers would see that she was a good person who was only telling her boyfriend to take her home. Sasha tried to use her current behavior to prove she was innocent. "You can see how I'm acting now," she said, pointing out that she was being relatively calm while sitting in the vehicle. She didn't realize that being calm after the fight didn't change what happened during the fight. Her denial was a way to protect herself from the scary reality of going to jail in a state where she had no friends or family to help her. The deputies didn't argue with her anymore because they had already made their decision based on the evidence and her earlier confession. Sasha's voice stayed loud, insisting that she hadn't hurt anyone and that the whole situation was not fair. This denial to the very end showed that Sasha was still living in her own version of the story, where her hurt feelings mattered more than the law or the bleeding man she left behind at the gas station. The patrol car pulled away from the gas station, leaving the bright lights behind as they headed toward the county jail. Inside the car, the deputy began the formal process of gathering her information for the booking report. How do you spell your first name?" he asked. Sasha, whose legal name was Fantasa, began to spell it out slowly, Fantasa. She told him her middle initial was D and confirmed once more that she was from Omaha, Nebraska. The officer told her that things were a lot easier when people cooperated, and for a moment, Fantasa seemed to agree. She claimed she wasn't trying to be difficult, but she still felt that going to jail was not fair. She was terrified of what would happen next, especially since she had no money with her and was in a town she didn't know. Her mind was still spinning with questions about whether she could see her husband or if he even knew she was being taken away. At the jail, the property bag was waiting for her belongings. The deputies explained that she would be able to make phone calls once she was fully booked, but Fantasa was worried about the time it would take. As she walked through the doors of the facility, the reality of being booked became very real. She was no longer just a driver on the road, she was Fantasa King, a prisoner being processed into the system for a night she would never forget. As the sun rose over Ohio, the messy events of the night were finally written down in official reports. Fantasa had been charged with public intoxication and battery. While she sat in her cell, the police worked to put together the key pieces of the story so they could explain it all in court later on. Even though she spent hours denying she had done anything wrong, the evidence of her husband's bleeding head was impossible to ignore. The legal system in Fayette County didn't care about hurt feelings as much as it cared about the safety of the public and the victims of violence. Because she lived all the way in Nebraska, Fantasa would likely have to travel back to Ohio to finish her court cases or complete classes as part of her probation. Her life as an over-the-road trucker was now at risk because of the serious charges she faced. Looking back at the video, many people wondered if this would be the wake-up call Fantasa needed to stop drinking. The combination of alcohol and deep emotions had led her to a place where she lost her husband, her phone, and her freedom all in one night. In the end, the story of the woman stranded at the gas station became a lesson about accountability, showing that no matter how far you are from home, your actions always have consequences.